Vicky James, Orchestra Manager for the BBC National Orchestra and Chorus of Wales. Thanks for joining us, Vicky. It's lovely to see you again. Obviously, I have the pleasure of seeing you reasonably often because we both sit on the board of SMART. But it's great to have you here, Vicky, to talk to us about your career and how you've got there. You're reasonably newly in position, so that's also exciting to hear how it's going so far. But yeah, primarily, thanks for sharing your time. I know the students who watch this will, get an awful lot from what you're going to share with us today. So it's great to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me. So I remember very clearly the first time I really observed music. And It was when I was at primary school and I saw a teacher playing the flute, and I said, oh, I'd quite like to do that. That looks quite cool. And from there, I was bought a very cheap flute because I never stuck with anything, and so my parents didn't heavily invest to start with. But cut to nearly 20 years later, and I'm still involved in the business. I think in terms of when I first thought that the music business was for me in terms of from a professional point of view, that was probably when I was starting my A levels, and particularly when I was then at university. I didn't do a music GCSE because I had my grade 5 theory as part of my ABRSM exams, and I then chose to do A-level music because I was still very much involved in county music service ensembles and various other kind of performing opportunities throughout my sort of teenage years. And then at A-level, I did do music because I thought I might do a music degree. I thought I might want to explore music a bit further. Having said that, though, as I came to the end of my studies at school at sixth form, I was toying with maybe doing a law degree because I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to work in music. I enjoyed playing, I enjoyed the camaraderie and the ensemble and the going to beautiful venues and beautiful countries on tour with the music service, etc. But I wasn't totally sure where I might fit into the industry. I was then wisely advised to go to university and study something that I would enjoy for 3 years. And if I then still wanted to be a lawyer, I could do a conversion and go down a different route. So that led me to apply for music degrees. I then went to Manchester University to study music, and whilst I was at university, I very quickly realised that I wasn't going to be a performer because I didn't have that, I suppose, commitment to sitting in a practice and really honing my technique. I didn't have a huge amount of passion for developing my performance skills. What I really understood that I loved was working with other people, piecing things together, organizationally, operationally. And that's when I got involved in things like the Music Society at university. And that's when I went, I think this is what I want to do in the music industry. I think I said to myself, okay, well, how am I going to do that then? How am I going to make that my profession? And what I decided to do was to make the most of all of the opportunities that were available to me to do what I wanted to do professionally, but at the level that I was at. So I played many roles in the Music Society, starting as a conference manager and then moving to be president in my final year. And as part of that, was responsible, worked with the team to look at the budget, the programming, the personnel management, the venues, all of that kind of the contributing factors to what puts on a concert, puts on a season of concerts and performances. And alongside that, I also was in a big band with my pals, and after that had sort of established for a year, we realized that we needed a bit more organizational structure, and so we kind of allocated roles, and I took on the role of kind of band manager, booking venues and rehearsals and schedules and technical requirements and things for our gigs. And similarly, once I'd finished my university degree, but was, still had a few months after exams, I put some feelers out with various professional organisations within the locality of Manchester to say, hi, I'm around for a few months over the summer. Can I come and shadow for a week? Can I, come and say hello? And I ended up doing a couple of weeks of work experience with One Music, who are based in Manchester, who work it's an educational setting or they're focused on music in an educational setting. And I went to the Bridgewater Hall and, helped contribute towards a massive schools concert in Manchester. And I suppose that was generated off my own back and my own motivation to do that. And so my attitude towards doing that did change, in the sense of I felt I'd made a decision about an avenue I'd like to explore, and then worked out how I would get to that stage. And I feel that experience that I got at university, that I wasn't paid to do but had a great time doing, got me my first job effectively. So I still didn't really know what the roles were in the professional industry, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I knew all of the different orchestras in the country, because you hear them on the radio, or you know their names, or you see them on social media and various things, in terms of being involved in that, in an educational setting. And I didn't know what the job titles were that I was looking to work in. So I googled arts jobs and things, and looked and found different platforms that target arts jobs or advertise arts jobs, and set up alerts everywhere. I'd like an alert if there's a word that's called administrator, or a word that's called assistant, or there's a word that's coordinator within this kind of artistic field. And learnt about arts jobs, learnt about BBC Careers Hub, learnt about musical chairs, which are the kind of, I would suggest, predominant advertisers of the sort of roles in this industry. And I applied for everything that I could. I applied for jobs in Australia, I applied for jobs in the US, I applied for jobs all across the UK. And I think the thing I had in my brain at that point was, I don't really mind where I am or who I work for. I just want to work in the industry, and get my foot in the door, and then work out what might be next. So my first job was at Royal Northern Symphonia, which are based in Sage Gateshead, in Newcastle Gateshead. And that job title was concerts assistant. So I moved to Newcastle, not knowing anyone in Newcastle. At the age of 21, and started my first job. And I learned very quickly how a professional orchestra runs differently to that of an amateur or a student orchestra, in terms of the standard of the playing, in terms of musicians union contracts, in terms of the scheduling and all of the rules that go around that. And I had a great time, and I learned a lot, particularly in my first sort of 6 months. And once I felt I'd kind of got my feet under the table and understood a little bit about what it meant to do that role, I started to ask for a little bit more responsibility, or to do something that was perhaps a little bit more challenging for me. And was given a little bit of kind of some different projects to kind of oversee or to move forward, and sort of learn a little bit more then about the audience side of things, and how do you attract people to come to your concerts, or what other activity can you do around a main season concert that actually might diversify the audience, or might enhance their experience, or make it a more memorable occasion for them. So that then led, after a few months, to my role being changed to projects coordinator. So I focused then on a lot of orchestral activity that wasn't our kind of main season concerts, so particularly our family and schools concerts, our Christmas by Candlelight Baroque tour of the Northeast region, and it culminated. My career highlight to date was our 60th anniversary weekend, where the orchestra celebrated turning 60, and we had a full weekend of a pops concert with Northeast art, pop artists. We had a children's concert with cupcake picnic on the concourse. We had a chamber concert, and we had a main season kind of big celebratory hurrah with a balloon drop, and just crazy stuff. And it was brilliant, and that's why it's my career highlight. I think after that point, I'd done a couple of international tours that I'd helped organise. I'd covered for a few people leaving before their replacement started, in terms of learning a lot more about different areas of the business, including fixing, by which I mean booking freelance players to fill gaps within the orchestra, scheduling tours, and these other projects. And I felt I'd learned from Northern Sinfonia everything I could learn in that particular role, and I was ambitious for my next step. So I started looking for other jobs at a slightly higher level, and I'd worked out that what really made me tick, what really kind of professionally stimulated me, was working with people and putting together the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and taking an idea from conception to delivery. And so I explored jobs that might tick that box. And we may well talk a little bit more about luck and my belief in luck. I think I was lucky that my itchy feet lined up perfectly with the job that I then applied for and got, which was assistant orchestra manager at BBC National Orchestra of Wales.
Sure.
So the timing there was right. And I then moved to Cardiff, and I didn't know anyone in Cardiff at the age of 24 or whatever I was. And I then have been at BBC now for 3.5 years, and most recently, the last 3 months, moved to Orchestra Manager, and have learned a lot more about the people management side of things, by which I mean some HR things in terms of well-being, in terms of HR policies, in terms of leave, and how to run a big group of people. Sinfonia was a chamber orchestra. BBC now is a symphony orchestra. So I went from 37 orchestral musicians on contract to 78 musicians on contract. A much bigger team of people, a management team, and also going from being a publicly funded, in the sense of Arts Council England funding, and a more kind of commercial mindset, to moving to the BBC, which is of course funded in a different way through the licence fee. BBC now are also part funded by Arts Council Wales because of our remit as the National Orchestra of Wales. But with the different funding challenges that come then with being part of the BBC, and the different remits that we have. We're a national orchestra, we're a broadcast orchestra, and we're a symphony orchestra, and there are different tensions that pull against all of those various different things. So in the last 3.5 years, I've then learned more about people, much more about logistics, and health and safety, money, budgets, recruitment, and everything that goes with that.
Sure. Great.
To be honest, no. I think the only the right place, right time is only in the sense of I'd done 3 years at Sinfonia, and I decided I was ready for my next challenge, and within the same few months, BBC Now had decided they needed a new assistant orchestra manager, and that seemed to be the right job for me. It's exactly the job I was looking for. Similarly, my predecessor, the orchestra manager, left at a time where I'd been at BBC now for 3 years. I certainly wasn't getting itchy feet. I have been and was and am very happy in the role, and I didn't think that this was going to be my next step, but I had nothing to lose in applying for it. It's always a good idea to apply for a job, because you get your CV in a row, you really analyze your skills and bring that back to the forefront and kind of consolidate your understanding of who you are and what you can offer to a business and to an organization. And I applied for that position actually really not thinking I was going to get it. And I was offered the position, which took a lot of faith from the people appointing me, that they understood that it was a big step for me, but that they had the faith in me that they felt I would be able to learn and grow and really throw myself into the role and would be successful with their support and with the support that, you know, the BBC and the rest of the team can offer to me. So I don't feel either of those opportunities were necessarily lucky. There was an element of right place, right time, but also I work really hard, and have always worked really hard and have always been ambitious, particularly ambitious for leadership at some point in my career. But I'm always looking for the next opportunity. When I was at school, I wanted to be doing university. When I was at university, I wanted to be in the profession. And then when so I've always been looking to that next thing and trying to position myself in a place where when that opportunity does arise, I'm ready for it. So rather than waiting for that magic moment, I try and position myself in a stronger position as possible to be ready for the opportunity when it arises. Yeah, I think there's two things. There are two things I'm thinking about here. So the first is a fork in the road moment, of which I can think about two examples actually. So the first is when I was starting to get itchy feet at Northern Symphonia, and I wasn't not enjoying the work. I just wasn't feeling challenged or stretched anymore, because I was by no means perfect, but I was keen to challenge my brain a bit more, and I decided to look into doing a master's, which I did do. I did a year's full-time MA in Creative and Cultural Industries Management at Northumbria University, alongside working for Symphonia, which in reality, I had a day off a week from, or half a day off a week from Symphonia to do a lecture, and then did all of the other work in my spare time. So it was a very busy year. And I finished my dissertation as I moved to Cardiff for my next role, and so that was a fun summer. But so that was a fork in the road moment, in the sense of either I can stay where I am and I'm happy and I'm good at what I do, or I can seek out something more exciting, or seek out a bit more, intellectual stimulation, or seek out something a bit more exciting. And I was able to do both for a year. The other fork in the road moment was actually whilst I've been at BBC now, when we were doing quite a lot of work with television, with BBC Studios and other BBC related kind of indie companies to do with our work, and I really enjoyed working with people in telly, and I work for the BBC, which is, a media organisation, of which a big part of their delivery is television, linear and digital via iPlayer. And so part of me was going, well, I'm not ready to leave BBC now yet, but what other opportunities might be next for me? I love working in orchestras and I love working in music, but actually my skill set is quite transferable in terms of logistical planning and operational planning, working with people and managing people, working on concurrent projects. A lot of the time, the kind of financial and health and safety side of things, all of that is transferable to a wider production industry or the wider media industry. So I was thinking at that time, is that something I could explore as my next step? It then, you know, turned out that I was very much happy and I wasn't looking for my next step, and then my boss left and this other opportunity came up, and I'm very happy that I've made this decision and very happy in the role. And that's not to say that once I'm done with this role that I won't think about that again and maybe go down that route. So they're the kind of fork in the road moments. I didn't have anything else to worry about. You know, I was single. I don't have any children. I didn't have a house and a mortgage. So so I didn't have anything really tying me to a place except, you know, my own emotion, I suppose. And you know, I grew up in Suffolk and spent, you know, 13, 14, 15 years of you know, my is it performative years, afformative, whatever that word is. Formative, thank you. So I spent my formative years in Suffolk, but the landscape of Suffolk from a professional music point of view didn't offer the opportunities to me in the areas that I wanted to go into. There is not a professional orchestra based in Suffolk. Of course, London is not far away, and of course, Cambridge with Britten Sinfonia is not far away, and there is a multitude of cultural activity in Suffolk, but not that were able to offer the opportunities to me that I was looking for. So I had to leave Suffolk. I had to go somewhere else. And as I say, I applied to jobs everywhere because I just wanted to get my foot in the door. But I didn't have any other commitments. I only had to think about myself. And that's a very privileged position to be in. I did end up buying a house in Newcastle, which I lived in for 2 years and then moved to Cardiff, you know, and was that the right decision? I mean, who knows? I now have a house in Cardiff and I'm hoping to be here for a little bit longer than 2 years. But I think with risk comes reward, and that has been a positive experience for me. You don't always get reward with risk. I understand that. And certainly my move to Newcastle, I perhaps didn't put myself out there outside of the professional sphere as much as I could have done in order to really cement other areas of my life and really throw myself into other areas of life because I was really enjoying the job and that was my focus at that time. But I learned from that, and when I then moved to Cardiff, I made sure that I really did put myself out there, and I, you know, made the most of opportunities that were outside of work as well as within work. I think one of the beautiful things about the music industry is that for the most part, you've all got something in common. You know, it's such a niche industry to be involved in that people tend not to end up there by accident. And so you've almost automatically got a network of like-minded people, or a network of people who've got that thread of something in common. So through your professional networks, you're able to build social networks or further networks. You know, our orchestra have got a cricket team and a football team, and netball team, and so there are other things that link people together, but we know each other because of this wonderful thing that we're all involved in, and that is music. So yeah, with risk comes reward. You do have to work hard to get that reward, even when it's a positive experience for you. And so did I sacrifice anything? Well, I sacrificed the security of knowing people, and I sacrificed the security of knowing a city and knowing if that was going to be a positive experience for me. And for me, it was in the end.
Great.
Oh, so many, most of which I've learnt through being in the profession, and that you learn as you grow up and mature as a person and as an adult. But I think the biggest skills that I employ on a day-to-day basis are general organizational skills in terms of managing my time, managing my emails, and the kind of practical side of that, and making sure that I don't feel like I get overwhelmed with what's going on, and I know what's coming up for the day. So organizational skills generally, and time management to do with that. The other things I practice on a daily basis are empathy and patience.
Okay.
Empathy is the biggest buzzword in my brain on a day-to-day basis, because I work with you know, an operational team of 8 and an orchestra of contract orchestra of 78, plus all of the freelance family that go with that, and the wider BBC Now team and external stakeholders. And you know, people have lives, and they have lives outside of work, and they have good things and bad things outside of work, and that impacts on them. And the way I try and approach how we run the orchestra at BBC Now and the culture at BBC Now is that if you have a happy and healthy team, then you have a happy and healthy musical outcome. If they're happy and healthy, the content, the product, the broadcast, the performance is going to be happy and healthy. And there are balances to strike with that, of course. You know, we're a business at the end of the day. We've got to make money and things, but the people-centric approach and the empathetic approach is one that we very much invest in at BBC Now, and I therefore invest in as part of running the orchestra. And patience, I mean, that includes patience with myself. Sometimes I have to slow myself down. Sometimes I have to say, right, I'm not going to get to that today, and I need to be okay with that. You know, and as we were saying earlier, you know, we're just doing a bit of music, and it will all be all right on the night, you know, in the end of the day, because again, the people that work in the music industry, they're like-minded in the sense that we're all working towards that shared goal, and that shared goal is a great performance, and the team always rallies together to get there if various, you know, different hurdles have to be jumped. And so yeah, patience comes into that, and communication generally. I mean, I'm not just talking about emails and phone calls and things, but just having a laugh with people, knowing the right moment to be more formal, knowing the right moment to be more informal, and that allows you to build those trustworthy, reciprocal, respectful relationships that in any professional context, but I think particularly in music, in terms of understanding that I can't play the bass trombone, but our bass trombonist couldn't run an orchestra, and having that empathy with the different skills that we have and how we enable each other to do what we do, I think. My advice is to say yes to everything. I think generally to any opportunities that are presented to you, because you never know who you might meet or what you might learn about, or what you might overhear in a conversation in terms of another opportunity, or you know, anything along those lines. And by doing those opportunities, you learn more about yourself, you gain skills as well, and understand what you enjoy doing and what you don't enjoy doing, and so what you might then look for as your next step, or what you might look for as another opportunity. For me personally, I think I've matured as a person, and as a kind of arts manager, arts administrator, in terms of you know, listening more to other people and other people's opinions, and that kind of consultation process to understand the wider context, and to slow down as well. I think, you know, not my brain does work very fast, and sometimes that means I don't know, I make a mistake, or I not jump to the wrong conclusion, but I, you know, perhaps make a decision too hastily, and need to backtrack, or need to then, you know, fix problems that come with it. So I think listening and slowing down are the things I've learned about myself, in terms of advice I would give to others if they are interested in this career, that they're important things to think about. But I think generally saying yes is usually a good thing, and again, without risk there's no reward.
Yeah, and that's, I think, pretty much everybody I've interviewed, 10 or 12, I can't remember how many I've done
Yeah.
so far. I think they've all said the same thing there, which is saying yes generally leads to much more good stuff than it leads to bad stuff.
Yeah.
And if it does lead to bad stuff, you learn that lesson, and then
Absolutely.
you're equipped for the rest of the time.
Yeah,
Vicky,
absolutely.
that is super. It was really nice to see you and to talk to you. Thanks for
And
sharing all
you.
your thoughts with us.
Thanks.
It may well be that some of the students have some follow-up questions, which,
Of course.
with your permission, I'll send on to you. But we wish you the best of luck, and I will look forward to hopefully seeing you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Vicky.